Welcome to EdgeTX. Welcome to EdgeTX.
Good day. A little while ago I did a poll asking what firmware do you currently have on your transmitter. Out of over 700 responses, about half, or 49.8%, said OpenTX, and just about the same, 47.8%, said EdgeTX. And the number of pilots flying EdgeTX firmware seems to be increasing daily. So today I'm going to show you how simple it is to update the firmware on your transmitter from OpenTX to EdgeTX, all while keeping your models, custom images, sounds, and Lua scripts you currently have on your OpenTX firmware. I'll demonstrate this EdgeTX firmware update using the radiomaster TX16S, and also show you any differences that may exist for doing the same EdgeTX firmware update for your radiomaster Zorro or TX12 transmitters. It's time for living on the edge.
We're living on the edge!
Alright, here's an overview of what we're going to do. We'll be doing 3 steps to EdgeTX success. Then as a bonus, I'll briefly go over some of the EdgeTX themes features for color screen transmitters like our radiomaster TX16S. First, we'll back up our original OpenTX files in case we want to revert back to them. Second, we'll create our EdgeTX SD card with all the contents we want, including any models, custom files, and Lua scripts we want to save. Then for our third step, we'll flash our EdgeTX firmware. I've captured the steps we're going to go through in a PDF file you can download through a link below. It can save you some time because whenever you need to update your EdgeTX firmware, just open up the PDF file, and if you need a refresher, just click on the bullet statements, and they'll bring up this tutorial video at the exact time spot for the particular topic you've clicked on. Let's get started. First, we'll need to back up our SD card contents by copying and pasting them from the original SD card to a folder on our desktop computer. We're going to do that by taking the SD card out of the transmitter. On the TX12, it's located in the battery bay, right here. And then we'll put the SD card into an SD card adapter and plug this into our computer. On the left, you see our TX16S SD card contents, and on the right, you see our TX12 SD card contents. Notice there's a difference. With our black and white screen TX12 transmitter, and this should be the same for any black and white screen transmitter, you see there are no models in the model folder, as you have in the TX16S. Also, over here in the TX12, our black and white screen transmitter, there is no radio folder, whereas in the TX16S, there is no EEPROM folder. Now we can copy the contents of our SD cards to our desktop computer. Make sure to stay organized throughout this file management process by creating folders and naming them so you'll remember what's in them. Now we have copies of our SD card contents for both our radiomaster TX16S and our radiomaster TX12 on our desktop computer's hard drive. After we put our SD cards back into our transmitters, we're going to back up our OpenTX firmware and models and settings files using OpenTX Companion. This step is the same for color screen transmitters like the TX16S and monoscreen transmitters like the TX12, so I'm only going to demonstrate it with the TX16S. I've done a video previously that covers getting OpenTX Companion downloaded, installed, and up and running, as well as backing up everything. If you'd like to refer to that, I've got it linked in this video's description below. So we open up OpenTX Companion, power up our transmitter in bootloader mode by pressing these 2 trim tabs together and pushing the power button. Next, connect the transmitter to the computer through the USB cable, and whatever windows come up, just close them. Select the radio profile, which you've already made for your specific transmitter. I've shown how to do this in that previous video I mentioned, linked below. Click on the horizontal arrow button that says Read Firmware from Radio. Select a folder on your hard drive to save it to. Name the file, and click Save. Now you've backed up your OpenTX firmware currently in use by your transmitter to your hard drive. Remember, this step is the same for both color and monochrome screen transmitters. To reinstall the same OpenTX firmware should you need to, just click on this down arrow that says Write Firmware to Radio and select the file which you just saved to your hard drive. and then press Write to TX, and it'll write that file back to your transmitter. Now for monochrome screen transmitters like our TX12, we should do one more backup. We'll back up our models and settings files from our transmitter. With the TX12 still connected to the computer in bootloader mode, we click on the horizontal arrow icon up top that says Read Models and Settings from Radio. That'll open up a window with your models in it. Make sure the window's active by clicking on its top bar, then go to File, Save As, and select a folder on your hard drive you want to save it to. Name your file something to identify its contents, and click Save. Now if you need to reinstall that file to your transmitter for some reason when it's running OpenTX firmware, just go to File, Open, and grab the file you just saved. Then go to the vertical arrow icon at the top that says Write Models and Settings to Radio. Click on that and select Write to TX. And it will write that file from your desktop computer's hard drive to your radiomaster TX12. Now we're ready for step 2, creating our EdgeTX SD card. We can either start with a brand new SD card, like my go-to SanDisk 16GB card you can get on Amazon for about $7, and format it using FAT32, or since we've already backed up our SD card contents for both our TX16S and our TX12 to folders on our hard drive, we can just reformat those current SD cards using FAT32. So over here on the left, our TX16S SD card is connected to our E drive format, and I will do a FAT32 quick format, and it's going to erase everything here. And our formatting has been complete for our TX16S. And then over here, our TX12 SD card is connected to our F drive, and we'll click Format, FAT32, Quick Format, and it'll erase everything over on the right side. And format's complete. Then we want to download, unzip, and copy the EdgeTX SD card contents from this site, which I'll link to below, to your newly FAT32 formatted SD card. For the TX16S, the file we want is for our 480 by 272 color screen transmitter, this horse.zip. And for our TX12, we want the 128 by 64 monochrome screen file, which is labeled Tyrannus X7 zip. For both of these, we go to this site right here and click on this. Horus zip will download, and I will cut and paste that to our TX16S folder, unzip it, and we'll do the same for our TX12 with this Tyrannus X7 file. Now I'm going to open up another window for our TX12 SD card drive, and our SD card will be located on our F drive. And at this point, we just want to copy and paste the EdgeTX SD card contents for our TX12 from our desktop hard drive over to our TX12 SD card on our F drive. And we want to do the same sort of thing with our EdgeTX SD card contents for our TX16S and copy and paste these to the TX16S SD card drive, which is our E drive. Make sure you keep them straight and that you're copying the correct SD card contents to the correct transmitter if you happen to be working with two at the same time, like I am. And now our EdgeTX SD card contents for both our TX12 and TX16S have been copied over from our desktop computer's hard drives to each of the transmitters' SD cards. Next, we're going to use some of those OpenTX files we backed up. We're going to open up the folder we saved our OpenTX SD card contents to, which is this one here for the TX16S, while we have the TX16S SD card drive opened. Notice over here there is no model folder. We're going to grab the model folder that we previously saved, copy it, and paste it to our TX16S SD card, along with the contents that are in it. On our TX16S, we're also going to copy and paste the radio folder, which does not exist over here, to the new EdgeTX SD card. So now we've transferred both the radio folder and the models folder to our SD card. Now for both our color screen TX16S and our monochrome screen TX12, we can either use our OpenTX sounds by copying and pasting our OpenTX sounds folder to our new EdgeTX SD card, or we can download, unzip, and copy the EdgeTX sound pack contents to our EdgeTX sounds folder. I'll go ahead and do that for demonstration purposes. So we go back to our EdgeTX installation guide site, scroll down, and we can download the desired sound pack from this site. They're the same for all the transmitters, so you just want to grab the sound pack that's associated with your language. EN for English in my case. So we'll download that, I will cut that, and I will just paste it to either of these transmitters. In my case, I'll just do it with the TX16S, and we'll call it EdgeTX Sounds. Put it in that folder, unzip it, and now we have the EdgeTX Sounds folder over here on the right, the English language, with a whole bunch of files, and we can copy that over for our TX16S to our TX16S SD card on the SD card drive E to our sounds folder, which is currently blank. Now, since this sounds folder is the same for all the transmitters, I want to copy it again, and this time I want to paste it to the sounds folder for our TX12 at our SD card drive F. And now we've got the EdgeTX sounds pack in the appropriate language on both of our transmitters' SD cards in the sounds folder. At this point, for both types of transmitters, we're going to want to copy over from our OpenTX SD card contents here any custom sounds files, images, widgets, or scripts that we want to keep and copy over to our EdgeTX SD card in their respective folders. I'll just go through a couple examples on the radiomaster TX16S. I want my model images from my OpenTX SD card contents that we saved earlier. So there's my Arrow 3, Bat, Colugo, and we'll just go through here and grab each one of them. I'm just pressing down on the control key and left-clicking the mouse button to highlight the ones I want. Right-click, copy, and put that on our SD card for our TX16S on our E drive under our images folder. Now those image files I've copied over to our SD card drive. Let's say I want some of my custom sound files from my OpenTX sounds folder. Now, if you're not sure what I'm talking about with regards to custom images and custom sounds, I've got videos on each of those I've done previously, which I've got linked to in the video description below. You can go ahead and check those out on how to make your own custom images and custom sounds. Custom images for your models and also your background splash screen. So we'll go to our sounds folder, and I'm not going to grab all of my custom sounds at this point. I will just grab a few of them to show examples. Here's one with my battery low voltage. I've got a custom sound file that says feeling low.
Feeling low. TMac Mindy Home.
So I'll grab that, and once again I'm going to use the control key and my left mouse button, and I just scroll down here, and here's one that's called Link Low, Launch Active, Mission Active for Autopilot, Position Hold Active, and those are the ones we'll do for now. Right-click, copy, and put those in our sounds folder. And there they are. My last example will be my GPS drone tracker widget and Lua script. So I'll go to my OpenTX SD card widget folder that we've saved over here and grab this GPS widget that doesn't exist yet over here and just paste it to our widgets folder on our new EdgeTX SD card. Now you're going to want to make sure that you're using the latest version of the widget that's compatible with EdgeTX. For this particular GPS drone tracker widget, one of the devs has been kind enough to modify the main.lua file to work with EdgeTX. I've got this linked in the video description below, and you'll want to copy this from the link below and paste it over into this GPS widget folder on your SD card drive to replace the one that's currently in that original widget folder. What this revised main.lua script does is it prevents the GPS drone tracker widget from interfering with the top bar on your TX16S main screen display. The widget will still work without it. However, it'll interfere with the top bar on that main screen display of your TX16S so that making the colors of that top bar change somewhat randomly. There's a Lua script that goes with this GPS drone tracker also, so I need to go to my scripts tools folder and copy and paste this GPS viewer T16 Lua over to my EdgeTX SD card, scripts tools folder. And there we have that. Do the same sort of process for any of the other custom files you want to keep, regardless of the type of transmitter that you have. So if you're working on a monochrome screen TX12 or radiomaster Zorro transmitter, and you've got some custom sound files, copy the custom sound files from your OpenTX sounds folder, which you saved, to your sounds folder on your new EdgeTX SD card. And that's going to do it for our second step to EdgeTX success. We're now ready for step 3, flashing our EdgeTX firmware. This is simple. We're going to download, unzip, and copy the latest EdgeTX firmware.bin file for our specific radio to our EdgeTX SD card firmware folder. We do that by going to this site, EdgeTX installation guide, scroll down, and download the current EdgeTX firmware by clicking on this link. Once we get to the site, the current version of the firmware while I'm recording this video is 2.6.0. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and these are different types of computer systems files for EdgeTX Companion, where it says CPN, and we want EdgeTX firmware. I'm going to click on that. It's going to download over here, and I'm going to cut it and paste it to a folder on my hard drive. I'll unzip it. And now you see you've got different firmware files for different types of transmitters. I'm working with the TX12, and I'm also working with the TX16S. I want to grab both of those, one at a time, and put them on my hard drive folder for each of those transmitters. So let's grab the TX12 and stick it in our TX12 folder. And then I want to grab the TX16S and stick it in my TX16S EdgeTX firmware folder. Now I want to copy that TX16S firmware file from my hard drive over to my SD card on my SD card drive in its firmware folder. And I want to do the same thing for the TX12 EdgeTX firmware copy, and I'm going to put that on the TX12 SD card on my SD card drive F. Now we just need to put the SD cards for each transmitter back in the transmitters. Turn on your radio.
Switch warning. Welcome to EdgeTX. Welcome to EdgeTX. Switch warning.
Those welcome to EdgeTX sounds that you just heard was only because we've got the EdgeTX sound files on our SD card. We still have the OpenTX firmware on both of the radios. I'll confirm that by going to our system file and paging over to version. Here we have OpenTX TX16S. So we haven't yet flashed our transmitter with the EdgeTX firmware. See if I can do the same thing over here. And here you see we've got the OpenTX firmware on our radiomaster TX12 as well. We have not yet flashed it with EdgeTX. We'll return out of here. Now we're going to page over to the SD card screen. We're going to select firmware. Then we're going to scroll down to our edgetx.bin file. Press enter. And we're going to select Flash Bootloader. Now that's done, we turn the radios off. And then we're going to power them back on in bootloader mode by holding these two trim tabs together and pressing the power button at the same time. I'll obviously have to do that one at a time. Now we're going to select Write Firmware. And we'll select the EdgeTX firmware.bin file to flash. Once we do that, it's going to do some file conversions. On the TX12, it's going to convert our EEPROM file, which should grab our old model files and convert those for EdgeTX so that we've preserved our previous models. On the TX16S, it'll do the file conversions on the SD card. Here it says hold Enter long to flash, hold Enter to start, and they're both writing and flashing the EdgeTX firmware to our transmitters. Once it's complete, we exit out. Here you see it's converting the EEPROM.
Welcome to EdgeTX. Switch warning. Switch warning.
And you've now got EdgeTX firmware on your transmitter and you're ready to go. I'll press Model. And here you see our previous models have all been saved. Now you just set up your widgets on your EdgeTX screen the same way you did previously with OpenTX. Now as a bonus, I'll quickly go over some of the EdgeTX themes features using the TX16S. Press our Systems button and page over to our themes icon on the top bar. Right there. Now you can scroll down to any one of these 5 themes. Select it and set it as your active theme. That changes not only the colors on your main screen, but also those on all of your model setup pages. Experiment with these different themes to see what colors you like the best. You can also make your own theme and color scheme. Before I show you how to do that, I need to show you what happens when you change your color schemes. When you go to the README file of the themes folder on your EdgeTX SD card, you'll get some text that describes what areas of the screen on each pages are affected by changing the colors. This can be useful, however, I myself have found it somewhat difficult to visualize from the text. Now you can select one of the themes other than EdgeTX default and select Edit and change the colors to whatever you'd like. On some of the themes, what colors you'd like to change are obvious on this main screen. However, remember when you change some of these colors, they're also changed on subsequent screens for your model, which could make reading the text on those other screens somewhat difficult. And I haven't found a way yet on this current version of EdgeTX to page over to view what the color changes would be on the other pages besides this main screen before actually making the changes. So this can be somewhat hit or miss on color changes. Let me show you how I like to go about making my own themes and color changes. Go to this site, EdgeTX Theme Creator by Ed Riskus, which I've got linked below. This currently works with EdgeTX version 2.60 with a couple minor changes I'm going to demonstrate for you. With this site, you can play around with the colors as you'd like and see how they change not only on the main screen, but also on subsequent screens before you actually make the changes. If you don't like the colors you've changed, you can revert back to the original colors and start over. You can even choose a background image to upload, and the site will resize it for you to the correct 480 by 272 pixel size for your radiomaster TX16S screen. Once you get the colors and background you want, click Download, and then theme.yml. Notice this will save a file called edgetx.yml to your Downloads folder. Change its name to theme.yml. Now click Background, and it will download your resized background image to your Downloads folder. This needs to be named background.png. Now you have the 2 files you need for your new theme in your Downloads folder. Connect your transmitter's SD card to your computer either through a USB adapter or powering up your transmitter in bootloader mode. This will bring up your SD card drive. Change the name of your EdgeTX folder in your themes directory to old_EdgeTX. This will preserve this theme if you want to go back to it at some time. You just need to change its name back to the original EdgeTX name. Now, make a new EdgeTX folder. Copy both of these files from your Downloads folder into your new EdgeTX Themes folder. Remember, currently on EdgeTX version 2.6.0, whatever background image you have in your EdgeTX theme folder is the background image that will show up regardless of what theme you select. Disconnect your transmitter from the computer or put your SD card back into the transmitter if you've used a USB adapter. Power on your transmitter.
Welcome to EdgeTX. Switch warning.
Press your Systems button and page over to your themes icon. Scroll down and select not your EdgeTX default, but your EdgeTX new theme that you just created. Set as active. Return out to the main screen, and then power cycle your radio. In this 2.6.0 version, you always need to power cycle your radio for the complete changes to take effect.
Welcome to EdgeTX. Switch warning.
Done! You've made your own custom theme. That's all I've got for you today. For more FPV fun stuff, remember to subscribe and hit that like button below. Thanks for your time, and I'll catch you next video. Clear skies, friend.